What would happen to this nation if some event or series of events plunged it into a depression like 1929? What would be different now? Would it hit us harder than it hit them? Are we more vulnerable than they were? Back in the Depression era, a little more than half of America lived in an urban area, a city. Now that number has skyrocketed to around 80%. And as a sure result, we become much more dependent for our necessities of life. Take food, for instance. During the Depression, 1 out of every 5 people in the workforce were involved in agriculture. Now the number that produce our food is only slightly more than 1%. At first blush, this appears to be a good thing. But the only way this has happened is through major dependence on heavy equipment, fuel, chemicals, and other products which may or may not be available to the farmer in hard times. Without these modern devices and products, would our food system be able to produce enough food for the more than 300 million people in this country? And even if the farmers can produce enough food, are we assured that it will make its way to our grocery shelves and that we will be able to buy it?
And you need to know that in our large cities, there's about 3 days' supply of food. Now, those supermarket shelves may look really full, and they are, because when you're taking it off, the clerks are stocking the shelves. And if they didn't stock the shelves just at the rate that you take it off without a panic, all those shelves would be empty in about 3 days, because the trucks need to keep running to keep those shelves full. What if the trucks didn't run? There are a number of things that could bring about situations where there could be really serious civil unrest in the cities.
Manufacturers, they make to order. And so when the order comes in, that's when they manufacture. A lot of manufacturers just don't warehouse anymore. Again, that's money. So having product tied up in a warehouse is money sitting there. And they aren't to tie up their money like that. The stockholders don't like to see that. But that supply, if you had a disaster anywhere in one of these major manufacturing areas, it would stop the trucks, it would stop trucks coming in with the supplies, it would stop trucks from going out to supply your major chains. And the major chains have their warehouses, and again, that product is turning over and over daily. And so it's not like they have half their warehouse full of flour. Flour has a certain slot within that warehouse. And to keep flour in that slot, they have to have trucks coming in all the time to replenish that. So you stop those trucks, you stop the supply of products to the stores. You know, one of the things I think of is in the event of a disaster, what do people do? They flock to the stores. They buy up all their staples and water. So your store will be empty faster than it's ever been empty before.
There is a phenomenon very well known to people who plan wars and build weapons that the average citizen may not know about, and that is called EMP. And this is electromagnetic pulse. It's produced various ways, but the most widespread pulse would be produced by a nuclear weapon detonated above the atmosphere. Our country has only one experience with that. This was in 1962, I believe it was, over Johnston Island, and we had an extra atmospheric burst. The weapon was detonated above the atmosphere, and this produced a surprising consequence. There was a huge flow of what today are called Compton electrons, and it was like a huge solar flare, orders of magnitude stronger than a solar flare, like really strong static electricity everywhere all at once. Another way of thinking about it is like a lightning strike everywhere. The Russian generals tell us that the Soviets, and I can quote this because this is in the public domain, it's not classified, tell us that the Soviets had developed an EMP weapon that produced 200 kilovolts per meter at the center. A weapon detonated 300 miles high above the United States would reach a line of sight the margins of our country, Florida and northwest Washington. And this would produce at the margins about 100 kilovolts per meter. If that's true, that is considerably more, I think, than anything that we designed and tested to during the Cold War when everybody was concerned about EMP. By the way, almost any country that has nuclear weapons in any war game, an EMP laydown is an early occurrence in that war game. And when the referee is there monitoring the war game, they just take their hand and wipe most of the assets off the table. Because what the EMP does is to, if it's strong enough, and 100 kilovolts per meter would be strong enough, it fries all microelectronics. That means there will be no more computers. Your car is full of them. There will be no more electricity. The only person you can talk to is the person next to you, unless you happen to be a ham operator with a vacuum tube set, which is 1,000,000 times less susceptible. The only way you can go anywhere is to walk, unless you happen to have a car that has a coil and condenser. And then you, of course, need to get some gasoline for your car. This would be a horrendous kind of an experience.
The banking situation, when this thing all falls through, we're going to have to be ingenious in making things work and dependent upon God. Because when this thing falls through, there won't be anything to rely on. I read a book one time that said that when this thing happens to this country, all financial support will be taken away from us. There'll be no financial support. We have to learn how to live without money. And the guy in the country is the one who's going to do this. People in the city are going to be cutting each other's throats. Well, there are cutthroats now, you know. But your garden in the city is not going to be yours. It's going to be everybody's. So we'll be like kings and queens living out in the country where we can have a garden to supply our family's needs.
It says here, warning, this book is the property of the United States government. It is unlawful to sell it to any other person or to use it or permit anyone else to use it, except to obtain ration goods in accordance with regulations of the Office of Price Administration. Cooperate with your local salvage committee. I don't believe this is over. I believe that in the future, because what I saw happen in Katrina, in New Orleans with Katrina, I think that was a wake-up call to people that live in the cities. Those that have their eyes open and are listening and maybe reading their Bible will understand what is going to happen in these cities. Things are going to happen that are going to be a lot worse than what happened in New Orleans. I believe we'll go back to rationing of some kind. And at that time, I would want to be living in the country with fruit trees and a garden and have my food and water sure.
A storm is coming, relentless in its fury. Are we prepared to meet it?